So, chapter 5, the state of presence. It's not what you think it is. You keep talking about the state of presence as the key. I think I understand it intellectually, but I don't know if I have ever truly experienced it. I wonder, is it what I think it is, or is it something entirely different? It's not what you think it is. You can't think about presence, and the mind can't understanding. Understanding presence is being present. Try a little experiment. Close your eyes and say to yourself, I wonder what my next thought is going to be. Then become very alert and wait for the next thought. Be like a cat watching a mouse hole. What thought is going to come out of the mouse hole? Try it now. That's how the mind works. So you can never understand what it is, to be in the now. You can only experience it. Mind, it's so different, so nice, and so tricky. All three at the same time. Now, for a second, I want you guys to just close your eyes and be very clear to what I'm saying. And I want you not to think about a white elephant. You can think about anything, but do not think about a white elephant. Open your eyes, be back in the room. What did you see? White elephant. हमने उसको बोला भैया नहीं देखना, नहीं सुनना उसके बारे में, वो फिर भी व्हाइट एलिफेंट पे चले गया. Why is that? Anybody wants to take a guess?
Is it because that the mind always challenges you in its own way? Ki I'm superior, so whatever I say, is it like
Kind
a
of,
challenge to the
because
being?
this is the ego being triggered. When you're saying not, so you go, अच्छा है ऐसे कैसे मैं तो देखूंगा. So it's a very clear thing. Bhaiya, I do not have to think about a white elephant. So I can say, bhaiya, okay, no white elephant, not even an elephant. Let's think about a car. Let's think about a toy. No, मैं तो white elephant ही देखूंगा. So that's how it is. So now if I'm saying of this book in the last 4 chapters, we are saying that you are not your mind, is because we want you to realize this fact that the mind does not listen to you always. The mind does not listen to what is external. अभी मैंने बोला do not think, फिर भी mind ने white elephant सोचा. That means he is not listening to you. That is why we are now disconnecting or connecting with this new awareness that we are not our mind, so that we are able to use the power of the mind to our benefit. It's like harnessing the energy of the mind for the right purpose and for the right gain. Well, I had to wait for quite a long time before a thought came in. Exactly. As long as you are in a state of intense presence, you are free of thought. You are still yet highly alert. The instant your conscious attention sinks below a certain level, thought rushes in. The mental noise returns. The stillness is lost. You are back in time. To test their degree of presence, some Zen masters have been known to creep up on their students from behind and suddenly hit them with a stick. Quite a shock. If the student had been fully present and in a state of alertness, if he had kept his loin girded and his lamp burning, which is one of the analogies that Jesus uses for presence, he would have noticed the master coming up from behind and stopped him or stepped aside. But if he were hit, that would mean he was immersed in thought, which is to say, absent, unconscious. To stay present in everyday life, it helps to be deeply rooted within yourself. Otherwise, the mind, which has incredible momentum, will drag you along like a wild river. What do you mean by rooted within yourself? It means to inhabit your body fully, to always have some of your attention in the inner energy field of your body, to feel the body from within, so to speak. Body awareness keeps you present. It anchors you in the now. We'll get to it in chapter 6. So, it is, अगर like जो हम यहाँ पे अभी एक example दिया है that the Zen masters used to do this trick with with the fellow monks and their students. It's all about being aware and being consciously aware. Because see, माइंड क्या करेगा, माइंड हमेशा आपको किसी एक थॉट में उलझा देगा, और वो थॉट या पास्ट का होगा या प्रेजेंट का होगा. Sometimes you are physically here but mentally you are somewhere else. That means you are in your thought, and that thought would be of a future event or of a past event. That means you are not in the now. Because when you are in the now, you are actually being in a premise where you're consciously aware, and you're consciously aware of your thought. You are not in your thought. It's like there is a thought, you are aware of it. Okay, next. And you are just letting that thought flow. You're not giving it your attention. You're not going with the thought. Because the moment you give it attention, the moment you give it energy, there you are with the thought. And that thought will take you either in the past or in the future. You're out of the now. Because वो mind हमेशा thought में आपको रखता है. So whenever you are, try it tomorrow, 5 minutes. Just sit, eyes open, wide awake, and observe the thoughts. कुछ नहीं बोलना, कुछ नहीं सुनना. ये नहीं कि कोई वीडियो लगा दिया या कुछ कर, एकदम एक कमरे में कल्ले. And if possible, wear an eye mask so that you are not able to see. Because if from your sight also the mind gets distracted quite a lot. So just wear your eye mask, 5 minutes. Just sit quietly and see how many times you go into that thought and travel into the past or travel into the future. It's like your own time machine. Because, there will be a thought. Either you let it go or that thought is going to catch your attention. And once it catches your attention, you are going to give it energies. And when you're going to give it energies, you're going to travel with it. It's like you're paying to take that time travel. So giving energy or giving money is similar in this case. So that you are able to travel in that time machine. But if you do not give in the money, that means you do not get the ticket. That means you're not giving it your energy. That means you will not travel in the past, you will not travel in the future. You will be in the now. So जो हमारी attention, हमारी awareness, thought को energy जब हम देते हैं, उसको ticket खरीद लेते हैं, वो आगे पीछे घुमाता है. So we need to be, and once you are clear that you are consciously aware, that means you are not going to give it your energy. But consciously aware में बड़े लोगों को ये भुलेखा होता है. I was very conscious of that thought. It was taking me in the past, then I was coming back. It was taking me in the future. So in the first place, you gave it energy. That was your entry ticket. So that it could take you in the past, it could take you in the future. It happens with everybody. I'm not saying कि ये नहीं होगा, ये होगा. But then you need to realize that this is also giving energy. But if there is a thought and you say, okay, ठीक है. And again, now this is where your strategy of gratitude works. For example, you have this thought and you are about to give it energy because you are consciously aware कि भैया मेरे को thought नहीं अगर thought आएगा मुझे उसको energy नहीं देनी, but वो thought आ गया, अब आपने energy नहीं देनी है, you change that thought there. हे परमात्मा तेरा शुक्रिया, हे परमात्मा तेरा शुक्रिया, thought आने बंद हो जाएंगे. Now this is one of the major reasons why a lot of our ancestors, our grandfathers and forefathers were always doing their mala. What is the logic? कि गलत थॉट आए ही ना, हम उसको टेंशन तो बाद में देंगे, आए ही ना. तो हमने अपना थॉट वाला जो चैप्टर है उसी को चैनल करके एक फोकस दे दिया कि भैया इसी में करी जा. So if you are now doing this exercise, if you are that from that religious bent of mind and you want to do it, just do some mala and see आप थॉट को एनर्जी नहीं दोगे बिकॉज माइंड को एक चीज मिल गई है, वो उसी पे कॉन्सेंट्रेट कर रहा है. दैट इज वेयर द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ भक्ति योग comes, and that is one way to reach to reach to enlightenment, is one route of bhakti, because then you are channelizing your thoughts towards a specific mantra so that there is no room for any other thought. नहीं तो थॉट आएगा और हमारे पास तो पैसे ज्यादा है, हम तो टिकट खरीदेंगे टाइम मशीन की, फ्यूचर में भी जाएंगे, पास्ट में भी जाएंगे. बट दैट when you are from a premise of consciously aware and you feel that this thought is overpowering you, that you are being forced to buy the ticket, that is when you switch and get onto a route of gratitude or bhakti. Start doing, if you are of that religious mind, you want to do any mantra, apni mala nikal ke mantra kar lo, then you will be in that now, because you will be just chanting that. That is also one of the major routes towards enlightenment, towards spiritual enlightenment. Other route nahi hai, jaise for me, I do not resonate much. Probably right now I don't know what is in store for me, but yeah, currently what I am doing, जब मुझे ऐसा कुछ लगता है तो my standardizing, हे परमात्मा तेरा शुक्रिया, हे परमात्मा तेरा शुक्रिया, हे परमात्मा तेरा शुक्रिया. दूसरे थॉट्स आने बंद हो जाते हैं बिकॉज हमने माइंड को एक चैनल दे देगा, भैया तो इसी लाइन में सोच सकता है, नहीं तो वो घुमाएगा, तो पूरी सैर कराएगा. It's the live Appu Ghar happening in your mind. The esoteric meaning of waiting. In a sense, the state of presence could be compared to waiting. Jesus used the analogy of waiting in some of his parables. This is not the usual bored or restless kind of waiting. That is a denial of the present, and that I spoke about already. It is not a waiting in which your attention is focused on some point in the future and the present is perceived as an undesirable obstacle that prevents you from having what you want. There is a qualitatively different kind of waiting, one that requires your total alertness. Something could happen any moment. And if you are not absolutely awake, absolutely still, you will miss it. This is the kind of waiting Jesus talks about. In that state, all your attention is in the now. There is none left for daydreaming, thinking, remembering, anticipating. There is no tension in it, no fear, just alert presence. You are present with your whole being, with every cell of your body. In that state, the you that has a past and a future the personality, if you like, is hardly there anymore. And yet, nothing of value is lost. You are still essentially yourself. In fact, you are more fully yourself than you ever were before. Or rather, it is only now that you are truly yourself. Be like a servant waiting for the return to the master, says Jesus. The servant does not know at what hour the master is going to come. So he stays awake, alert, poised, still, lest he misses the master's arrival. In another parable, Jesus speaks of the five careless, unconscious women who do not have enough oil, consciousness, to keep their lamps burning, stay present, and so miss the bridegroom, the now, and don't get to the wedding feast, enlightenment. These five stand in contrast to five wise women who have enough oil and stay conscious. Even the men who wrote the Gospels did not understand the meaning of these parables. So the first misinterpretations and distortions crept in as they were written down. Subsequent erroneous interpretations, the real meaning was completely lost. These are parables not about the end of the world, but about the end of psychological time. They point to the transcendence of the egoic mind and the possibility of living in an entirely new state of consciousness. So, the five things what Jesus is talking about is very, very different and very, very clear here. So, it says five careless women. Careless means unconscious. He's referring to as unconscious women who do not have enough oil. Oil is the consciousness to keep their lamps, to be in the present. So they miss the now and they miss the wedding feast. So, in order to get to that enlightenment, you have to be in the present, be in the now, and have your consciousness, your alertness, your awareness in the now. Because वही है जो आपको जो आप whatever you are seeking in your path of spirituality or your path of enlightenment, whatever you are going to get, that is only going to be clearly visible to you in the now. Because अगर आप aware ही नहीं हो, you are not aware, how will you know it happened? क्या पता होके निकल गया, पता भी नहीं लगा. A lot of times it happens, you are looking for something and you are unable to find it. And दूसरा मतलब यार वही तो पड़ा है और नहीं यार कि माल है मैं ढूंढ रहा हूँ नहीं मिल रहा मुझे. You're not in the now. Because you're looking for something at that place and probably that thing is not at that place, so your mind gets confused कि भैया अब क्या होगा. But if you are fully aware कि हाँ इधर नहीं है तो इधर आसपास होगा, and then you find it, you only find it. It's not the other person will come and find it. A lot of times you also find it. कभी कभार तो होता भैया मेरे को तो मिल ही नहीं रहा, दिखाओ कहाँ है. And then the other person will go बिल्कुल सामने से निकाल के आपको दे देगा. And a lot of times you work 1 or 2 minutes and then you find it. So that is being conscious. अब उस टाइम पे जब आप वो चीज ढूंढ रहे होते हो तब माइंड में ये नहीं चल रहा होता कि भैया कल क्या करना है, परसों क्या करना है, उसने क्या बोला था. फिर होता है यार मैं जो ढूंढ रहा था वो कहाँ है. So be observant. At times there is no mind because you are so occupied in the now, and that is where you are able to find that thing there. So जरूरी नहीं है अगर हमें लगता है कि सारा टाइम हमारा माइंड चल रहा है. There are a lot of times we saw in extremities, extreme adventure sports, there is no mind. वो डर जाता है because you are so in the moment, you're so in the now that it goes. A kid when he's watching his favorite cartoon, there's no mind. He's not thinking कल स्कूल में क्या होगा, टीचर मारेगी, ये करेगी, वो करेगी. No, He's in the now. He's in that flow. Where is the mind? It's not there. It's enjoying having popcorn with the other person. So there are times if you are aware, consciously aware of your exact day to day, you will get to know now with this new awareness that there are actual times where your mind is not there. And there are a lot of times where you are taken over by your mind and you bought that ticket of that timeless machine. Beauty arises in the stillness of your presence. What you have just described is something that I occasionally experience for brief moments when I'm alone and surrounded by nature. Yes, Zen masters use the word satori to describe a flash of insight, a moment of no mind and total presence. Although satori is not a lasting transformation, be grateful when it comes, for it gives you a taste of enlightenment. You may indeed have experienced it many times without knowing what it is and realizing its importance. Presence is needed to become aware of the beauty, the majesty, the sacredness of nature. Have you ever gazed up into the infinity of space on a clear night, awestruck by the absolute stillness and inconceivable vastness of it? Have you listened, truly listened to the sound of a mountain stream in the forest, or to the song of a blackbird at dusk on a quiet summer evening? To become aware of such things, the mind needs to be still. You have to put down for a moment your personal baggage of problems of past and future, as well as all your knowledge. Otherwise, you will see but not see, hear but not hear. Your total presence is required. Beyond the beauty of the external forms, there is a more here, something that cannot be named, something ineffable, some deep inner holy essence. Whenever and wherever there is beauty, this inner essence shines through somehow. It only reveals itself to you when you are present. Could it be that this nameless essence and your presence are one and the same? Would it be there without your presence? Go deeply into it. Find out for yourself. So, even if it's a momentary glimpse of that true enlightenment, as they refer to as Satori, or, when you're taking a nice nature walk, just, being there and enjoying each and every leaf, enjoying each and every sight you see, and totally immersing yourself. So, this is one which is common to all, and everybody will definitely have an own individual situation or an event or a hobby in which, when they're doing it, there is no mind at play. वो mind साइड पे रख के हम अपना वो कर रहे होते हैं, and we are actually in that flow. So a nature walk is one. For a lot of people, sports is one. A lot of people, arts is one. So there can be so many things for so many different people, but it's just that we are not aware कि वो है क्या. Now, with this new awareness, with this new knowledge in your consciousness, that is being with your true self. That is a glimpse, that is a satori which you are experiencing. But that is momentary. Kabhi kabhi aayegi, thodi der ke liye aayegi. But that is what it means to be one with the source, to be in that oneness where there is no mind. Because in that, there is no jack. You're not judging, you're not expecting, you're not criticizing, and you're not complaining. So mind is still. Momentary high, dhire, 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 with your conscious working, conscious practice of being consciously aware of everything. And with this new awareness of seeing things through, whether you are, whether the jack is at play, whether the mind is at play, will get you more insights into these moments. So start cherishing these moments. Start cherishing all the Satori moments you are getting. That is how you will start getting more into being consciously aware and dropping the jack, stilling the mind. When you experienced those moments of presence, you likely didn't realize that you were briefly in a state of no mind. This is because the gap between that state and the influx of thought was too narrow. Your Satori may have lasted for a few seconds before the mind came in, but it was there. Otherwise, you would not have experienced the beauty. Mind can neither recognize nor create beauty. Only for a few seconds, while you were completely present, was the beauty or that sacredness there. Because of the narrowness of that gap and a lack of vigilance and alertness on your part, you were probably unable to see the fundamental difference between the perception and the thoughtless awareness of beauty and the naming and interpreting of it as thought. This time, gap was so small that it seemed to be a single process. The truth is, however, the moment thought came in, all you had was a memory of it. The wider the time gap between perception and thought, the more depth there is to you as a human being, which is to say, the more conscious you are. Many people are so imprisoned in their minds that the beauty of nature does not really exist for them. They might say, what a pretty flower, but that's just a mechanical mental labeling because they are not still not present. They don't truly see the flower. They don't feel its essence, its holiness, just as they don't know themselves, don't feel their own essence, their own holiness. Because we live in such a mind dominated culture, most modern art, architecture, music, and literature are devoid of beauty, of inner essence, with very few exceptions. The reason is that the people who create those things cannot even for a moment free themselves from their mind. So they are never in touch with that place within where true creativity and beauty arise. The mind left to itself creates monstrosities, and not only in art galleries. Look at our urban landscape and industrial wastelands. No civilization ever produced such ugliness. If you listen to a lot of these successful artists and their biographies, so they are so in that moment when they're making that masterpiece that if their attention gets diverted or the mind takes control, they stop the painting there and then and they cannot get back to it. And you have a lot of paintings which have been completed by others because they were incomplete. And the actual true artist said, I cannot complete it now. Because he's not, tuned in that moment and he lost it. And there are times where they have been able to successfully paint a beautiful painting in a matter of no minute. चाहे उसमें टाइम ज्यादा भी लगा हो, उनको पता ही नहीं लगा. I know of people who they're artists. I mean, they can be working for 5 hours without realizing that उनकी body भी थक सकती है, or they need a break. No, they're in the now. उनको नहीं पता लगता. Because जब we are not in the now, the mind is constantly at chatter. ओहो 1 घंटा हो गया यार, एक ब्रेक तो बनती है, चाय और कॉफी तो पी ले यार, थक गया यार. So that's not, your true self. It's your mind or your body speaking to you. But when you're in that now, they're silent. Because जो भी वो बोल रहे हैं, you cannot hear it because you are so engrossed in something that even if they're trying to speak, it's falling on deaf ears. When I share this example of a child watching his favorite cartoon, and when we try to call him, or for example, Manthan is there, or anybody, it takes 4 or 5 shouts to reach out to the child. Because that child is so in the now, is so in that cartoon, that my voice is falling on deaf ears. तो कांस्टेंट 2, 3, 4 बार बोलना पड़ता है, तब जाके उनको लगता है हाँ मेरे को कोई बुला रहा है. It's the same with what happens with people when they're so immersed in the now that they shut all their doors which are of the mind. And that's possible to do it.
But in that state, if somebody is calling out to you and you are just so lost in whatever that moment that you're experiencing, wouldn't people say, oh, you're so lost, you don't even know what we are talking about?
Obviously, वो भी same चीज ही है. It's not that कि वो same चीज नहीं है. What I'm trying to tell you is when you are in that now, everything gets shut. So वो एक moment है. See, because अभी क्या है, we are not in that practice कि हम उसको इतना elongated period of time के लिए कर पाएं, because that takes a lot of practice. So that is why everybody is going to be. But since if you are able to practice that enough, like a lot of people who do so much of dhyan, that they can do it for good 1 or 2 hours without paying attention to what is happening outside. But that's practice. अभी हमारे पास वो प्रैक्टिस नहीं है, तो एवरीबडी विल से दिस बिकॉज वही हमारे ईयर्स को अच्छा लगेगा, और समथिंग व्हिच वी आर यूज्ड टू. बट इफ यू आर इन दैट ध्यान एंड यू आर हैड सो मच ऑफ दैट प्रैक्टिस, यू आर इन द नाउ. Realizing pure consciousness. Is presence the same as being? When you become conscious of being, what is really happening is that being becomes conscious of itself. When being becomes conscious of itself, that's presence. Since being, consciousness, and life are synonymous, we could say that presence means consciousness becoming conscious of itself, or life attaining self-consciousness. But don't get attached to the words and don't make an effort to understand this. There is nothing that you need to understand before you can become present. I do understand what you just said, but it seems to imply that the being, the ultimate transcendental reality, is not yet complete, that it is undergoing a process of development. Does God need time for personal growth? Yes, but only as seen from the limited perspective of the manifested universe. In the Bible, God declares, I am the Alpha and the Omega, and I am the living one. In the timeless realm where God dwells, which is also your home, the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega are one. And the essence of everything that ever has been and ever will be is eternally present in an unmanifested state of oneness and perfection, totally beyond anything the human mind can ever imagine or comprehend. In our world of seemingly separate forms, however, timeless perfection is an inconceivable concept. Here, even consciousness, which is the light emanating from the eternal source, seems to be subject to a process of development. But this is due to our limited perception. It is not so in absolute terms. Nevertheless, let me continue to speak for a moment about the evolution of consciousness in the world. Everything that exists has being, has God's essence, has some degree of consciousness. Even a stone has rudimentary consciousness. Otherwise, it would not be, and its atoms and molecules would disperse. Everything is alive: the sun, the earth, plants, animals, humans. All are expressions of consciousness in varying degrees, consciousness manifesting as form. The world arises from consciousness, takes on shapes and forms, thought forms, and materials forms. Look at the millions of life forms on this planet alone, in the sea, on land, in the air. And then each life form is replicated millions of times. To what end? Is someone or something playing a game with form? This is what the ancient seers of India asked themselves. They saw the world as Leela, a kind of divine game that God is playing. The individual life forms are obviously not very important in this game. In the sea, most life forms don't survive for more than a few minutes after being born. The human form turns to dust pretty quickly too. And when it is gone, it is as if it had never been. Is that tragic or cruel? Only if you create a separate identity for each form. If you forget that its consciousness is God essence expressing itself in form. But you don't truly know that until you realize your own God essence as pure consciousness. If a fish is born in your aquarium and you call it John, write out a birth certificate, tell him about his family history, and 2 minutes later, he gets eaten by another fish, that's tragic. But if but if it's only tragic because you projected a separate self where there was none, you got hold of a fraction of a dynamic process, a molecular dance, and made a separate entity out of it. Consciousness takes on the disguise of forms until they reach such complexity that it completely loses itself in them. In present day humans, consciousness is completely identified with its disguise. It only knows itself as form and therefore lives in a fear of the annihilation of its physical or psychological form. This is the egoic mind, and this is where considerable dysfunction sets in. It now looks as if something had gone very wrong somewhere along the line of evolution. But even this is part of Leela, the divine game. Finally, the pressure of suffering created by this apparent dysfunction forces consciousness to disidentify from form and awakens it from its dream of form. It regains self consciousness, but it is at a far deeper level than when it lost it. The process is explained by Jesus in his parable of the lost son, who leaves his father's home, squanders his wealth, becomes destitute, and is then forced by his suffering to return home. When he does, the Father loves him more than before. The Son state is the same as it was before, yet not the same. It has an added dimension of depth. The parable describes a journey from unconscious perfection through apparent imperfection and evil to conscious perfection. Can you see the deeper and wider significance of becoming present as the watcher of your mind? Whenever you watch the mind, you draw consciousness from mind forms, which then becomes what we call the watcher or the witness. Consequently, the watcher, pure consciousness beyond form, becomes stronger and the mental formations become weaker. When we talk about watching the mind, we are personalizing an event that is truly of cosmic significance. Through you, consciousness is awakening out of its dream of identification with form and withdrawing from form. This foreshadows, but is already part of an event that is probably still in the distant future as far as chronological time is concerned. The event is called end of the world. So we stop here